Welcome to the shop. I moved into this shop almost a year ago. This is the Cobra Framebuilding machine shop, world headquarters. This is an industrial warehouse space unit that I rent. It's kind of longer and skinnier. It's 1,500 square feet. There's a bathroom, there's 3-phase power, there's even air conditioning and a shower. Yeah, I want to show you all around in here. So I'll start at this end of the shop here and show you pretty much everything. I picked up these Lista cabinets after the time when I was shooting a lot of the YouTube videos. I did have these back in my old shop in New York, and these cabinets are great. These are sort of an industrial, heavy-duty style of cabinet. We use these mostly for storing all the stuff that we ship and sell to customers. So if you know the tube bender, then you'll recognize a lot of these parts here. These are follow bars. This whole thing is filled with tube bender parts, bending dies. We got a lot of these. The idea is to keep these ready to ship at any moment so that if you want something, you don't need to wait a month for us to produce it. You know, unless it's custom, we try to always keep it in stock. These drawers are rated for 440 pounds per drawer, which is absolutely bonkers. And so, you know, you can pull it out and stand 2 human people on each drawer. Just an insane amount of capacity. So for heavy stuff like solid chunks of aluminum and stainless steel, that works. So these are all parts for the frame fixture. Try to have these labeled halfway decent. You know, the frame fixture that I produce now, we have a whole video outlining that, and we'll have more and more videos. But these are all the different head tubes and adapters, and this here is some argon purge stuff and all different pieces that go into it. It's pretty cool. Just really nice being able to store and inventory all this stuff here. And then this is, of course, where we do all the packaging. And this is a really big part of the job, is just packaging and shipping stuff, because rarely does anybody ever come and pick it up from us. We need to be able to ship stuff elegantly, hopefully efficiently, and so that it always gets there without damage. It's very important. So, you know, we use packing foam and, you know, brown paper to wrap stuff in, and we try to do, you know, tight fitting boxes as much as we can with appropriate void fill, all that stuff. You know, it's getting better constantly, and it's a real challenge. We even bought, you know, a glue gun, a box stapler, the banding stuff where you do the plastic banding that goes around the box and you crimp it. So like, we're really trying to take advantage of all the stuff that is available to do it as well as we can. It sounds kind of boring before you wrap your head around it, but when you start doing it every day, each little improvement and innovation and new tool is pretty exciting, actually. So I have a lot of fun with that. This is my employee Zach's desk. So if you haven't been following with me on like Instagram, since I've been making those YouTube videos a couple years ago, I've hired an employee, and you know, we've moved to this shop space. So this is primarily Zach's desk. He does a lot of the assembly. He uses this fiber laser to do laser marking on the parts. I might do some videos on this. It's pretty cool. This is a test piece here that shows you on black anodized aluminum what that can look like. It also works on stainless steel and other mediums too. And so we have notes to help us set it up more quickly. This is Zach's you know, machine right here. He runs this thing a lot, and so it's a really good way to put marks on the products that we make quickly to convey the information so that customers know how the hell to use it, or which interchangeable pieces are what, like for the tube bender, for instance. And yeah, he even has a vinyl plotter that we use occasionally to cut custom vinyl. Not really on customer stuff yet, but just for shop things. And as we start to build more and more bikes in this shop, you know, he's going to build some bikes, and I would like to build some bikes. It'll be really cool to be able to use that to, you know, do like masking for paint, or even for bead blast or etch or something. So really cool to have that capability here in the shop as well. This bench is something that I really love. I was looking for some sort of bench, and I found this on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist for $450, I think. This kind of bench would cost thousands of dollars if you had to buy it brand new. And it's in pretty good shape. We cleaned it up a little bit, and we need to rewire some of these outlets that are no longer connected. But this thing is a monster. It's like 10 feet long. It's taller than I am. This is a beast of a bench. It's maple top on here that's all laminated together. It's a really nice piece, and so there's a lot of space for like assembly and shipping, and we even keep the laser on it right now. Now I forgot to talk about my 3D printer when we were back here. It's pretty slick. So this is a Creality SE6 or something that I got 6 months ago. This is a sweet 3D printer. I've used this to make a couple pieces around the shop. It's a lot of fun. I would encourage anybody who likes making to try and dabble with one of these, either buy it or get one at a maker space. I might cover some uses of this for frame building. I've seen a lot of really clever stuff that frame builders have done. Like when you first see these, especially 5-10 years ago, it seemed like little widgets and toys that people would print off of the internet. It was a curiosity. But when you see a good application for this tool, you can't unsee it, and your brain starts thinking like all the cool stuff that you can make with it, really useful tools, and like organizational stuff. And I think what's really good about it for me is I design stuff and I'm very aware of how I'm going to make it on the CNC machinery. That's a subtractive process. There's certain limitations. You need to be able to hold stuff. This is a very different process that requires a different workflow and a different way of thinking. It has different benefits and different like drawbacks. And so as someone who designs stuff, it's been really valuable to me to be able to think about a totally different set of constraints for my designs and to be able to just make cheaply all sorts of useful stuff around the shop. I'll probably do some more videos about this in the future, but for frame builders, definitely I would recommend either playing with one of those or buying one. This was like $400 or something, totally worth every penny. This is going to be my new assembly bench. I'm really excited about this. Right now we have an array of frame fixture parts here, sub-assemblies ready to go. But pretty soon this will be fully transformed into an assembly bench, and the rule is this needs to stay open and empty for the purpose of assembling stuff, not for storing stuff. And so it's going to have on it every tool you could possibly need to assemble any tool that we make and ship, any product that we ship. So these T-handle Allen wrenches, of course, and lots of other tools will live in dedicated spots on the surface of this table. And like any other instructions that you need, I want to eventually have a little booklet that explains how to put this together and all that sort of stuff. And basically the idea is you can grab your shopping list from over there of all the hardware and components you need to assemble whatever it is that you're trying to assemble. And you carry it from there over to this bench, and then while standing in one position, you build the whole thing right streamlined at once. So like I notice that as we build stuff, a lot of times we're walking back and forth across the shop to like pick up this tool or do that. And I just really like the idea of like a dedicated cell for a certain task. And because it's on wheels and because it's relatively small and because assembly is such a big job for us, I'm really excited about like developing this. And so below we have storage for, these are the primary extrusions of the frame fixture. As we get them in, and then we can grade them and we can store them. Occasionally some of them will have damage. That's been an issue with our supplier, and so making notes of that and dealing with that accordingly so that our customers get the good stuff is part of what's going on there. And here we just have more packaging and shipping stuff. I bought a hand truck a little while ago. It's funny, man, when you have a shop and you like bust your ass moving stuff around, you start to really appreciate little stuff like, a $60 hand truck becomes like a lifesaver, and you never would think you could get so excited about a hand truck, and then you grow up, and I guess this is adult life or something. But speaking of which, this is something that I wanted for years. This is amazing. This is so the way Toyota models their names their forklift models, it has like this long string of letters and numbers. I have no idea what the model name of this one is, but anyway, this is it says 4,500 pounds. You can lift more than that. This is a forklift that we use to load and unload trucks that have like aluminum and stainless steel bars coming in. We now have these tubs here for the scrap chips, so we can pick those up and move them in and out. We have all of the parts that we've machined then on pallets as we take them to the anodizer or powder coater in the case of some of the frame fixture stand stuff. Basically, more often than I ever realized, you need to pick up heavy stuff in the shop. And there's usually a way to get it done inefficiently without a forklift, but this is the tool that allows you to quickly get that chore crossed off so you can get back to doing actually like machining stuff or helping a customer with a question or whatever it is that is more valuable than heaving crap around all the time. Not to mention, it's just so freaking cool. You can lift stuff like 155 inches, or I forget how high. It's just, I love owning a piece of heavy machinery for the first time in my life. It's a lifesaver. It also has side shift, which is really cool. Can't say enough cool things about it. It's my dream machine. This right here is the TIG welding sort of nook area zone, and this is pretty exciting because back 3.5 years ago, I got my first CNC mill, and my little frame building shop that was quite small, you guys would have seen it in my old YouTube videos, that was about 360 square feet of floor space that I could use. It was tiny, and it was big enough to do frame building, but I had to get rid of my dedicated TIG welding area and my like TIG welding bench that I was using. Those had to go in order to make space for my old CNC mill. And now that I moved here, I finally had room. And then recently, I actually picked up this is the table from inside of a CNC mill that was getting scrapped. I bought this for 250 bucks on Facebook Marketplace from somebody locally. And basically, I just had to grind some bits off of the bottom, and then I had to design and fabricate and weld out the legs that go under this. They just bolt on. We're going to get those powder coated soon enough. And basically, this is a sweet welding table that has T-slots on the top. It's very flat on the top, and it's built heavy duty. I absolutely love it. It works really nicely. And what's most important is that I can keep my TIG welder set up, ready to go. I have my electrodes out. This is a really cool project that I did recently. It's my electrode holder. I think I'm going to make a run of these for sale in addition to the couple that I made recently. It's just an organizational thing that's fun and cool, and it lets you know whether your tungstens are good to go or they're goobered up, and has the Cobra Framebuilding logo on it. Really fun making projects like that. So I got my hood right there. I even have my ground clamp is actually clipped onto the ground nub, which is a product that I sell independently now. This just happened to be drilled and tapped on the end for the perfect fastener size. 8mm socket head cap screw just bolts that right on and works out really good. This is the same TIG welder that I reviewed in a previous YouTube video and that I used in the past. This thing has been rocking solid for me for the last 7 years or something. I got this when I was 24 after I broke my hip in a bike accident. I said, now's the time for me to pick up TIG welding for real, and I studied up. I bought the machine, and it's been so good to me ever since. I might upgrade this to one that can do AC waveforms so that I can actually weld aluminum, but that's not a huge priority. This thing is a rock star. And I added this water cooler recently, so that little bucket has a $9 aquarium pump down in the bottom. And the whole idea with that is it just recirculates room temperature water through the hoses that go to my water-cooled TIG torch over there. So I upgraded the TIG torch. That cost me about $300 for the torch and the hose and the couplers. And essentially, you can do quite a lot of heavy welding before you would ever overheat the bucket water. And so I think I am going to buy a proper water cooler here. But the beauty of this setup is that it wasn't a half measure. I was able to buy a torch properly, spend almost no money though on the water cooler, and get the experience that I wanted, which was a cooler torch when you're welding hot and steady. And I didn't have to spend like 3 days, doing a homebrew build out and buying this cooler and this, transmission cooler from a junkyard. It's very simple, and it totally works. If you're going to weld steady with it, you should probably buy a real water cooler, but it definitely works. And then over here we have my TIG welding rod storage. I had my employee Zach color code these for me. This was a nice addition. I've had these for a long time, but just color coding them. So I think steel is blue, titanium is green, brazing alloys are yellow, stainless steel filler is red, and so it makes it a lot easier to distinguish between them quickly. And that's a really nice touch. So it's just plumbing that you get from the hardware store. You glue on the bottom, and then you take off the top. It keeps your rods very clean from any dirt or dust in the shop or oils, and especially for like the stainless and titanium, that's kind of a big deal. So over here, this is my material storage rack. What I like about this is that it's vertical, so it doesn't consume a lot of floor space. I got this a little ago, they advertise that you can stand a 12-foot stick upright, but that's not really the case. The tall ones here are maybe a little bit over 8 feet tall, and I don't know if I want to go that much longer on a stick. I feel like it'd be a little bit at risk of tipping over. As it gets tall, it stands further and further away from these little mounts here, and I feel like it would just want to tip over. And so I usually, when they're at full length, if 12 feet or longer, I'll take the cuts that I want to off of them, and then when I have a remainder that's short enough, I'll put it up on there. So I'm not in love with this rack, but it does do a pretty good job of getting a lot of stuff in a consolidated area where you can kind of sort through and pick stuff out. Because I bought this bandsaw, and I've needed to start to manage my material a little bit more wisely. So this is a 1996 automatic bandsaw. This is made by a company called Cozen, and this is a rebranded one that's rebranded Clousing. This is a C12AX, which I think is similar to the Cozen AH300 or something. Clousing and Cozen still makes them today and sells them still to Clousing. It's the KC12AX or something. It's like the same damn saw, and man, I saved a lot of money by buying this one used. This thing is sweet. It was a really big project. If you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen a lot of updates about this. But I bought it for pennies on the dollar. I think I paid $3,000 for the machine itself, and then I brought it back. It had a lot of leaks. It was set up for the wrong voltage. It had a lot of little things were kind of broken. This handle was busted off. Just a lot of issues all over the saw. I had to fix some plumbing here. You know, some of the issues are easy to fix. Some of them are not, you know, because you don't know exactly how to go about it. And there's still little tiny things that I want to dial in. But essentially, this saw is making beautiful cuts. And it's a big deal for a CNC machine shop like we have here, because basically you'll get in bar stock like this. This is I think 1¼ inch by 2 aluminum 6061 bar stock. So we make a couple different parts out of this, and you might want different cut lengths depending on what you're making. And if you have a quality horizontal bandsaw, then you know, typically what you would do with a smaller one is you would just pick this up by hand. It pivots back there, and you pass the bar through and you clamp it with a manual hand clamp, and you drop a cut, and then when that finishes, it stops. But you need to keep lifting up the saw, and you have to keep establishing the cut length. And the beauty of this saw is that it has 2 vices, and it advances the workpiece, and it just repeat cuts for you. And so on this counter up here, you can set the number of desired cuts. I still need to finish integrating this, but you can set the number of cuts you want, and then you can start the automatic cycle in automatic mode with the little automobile, and it'll just continue to cut over and over again with ridiculous precision. So generally, if I'm cutting aluminum bar stock, I can get a cut length to be roughly within 5/1000ths of an inch over, you know, the whole length of the bar. It's deadly accurate for a saw cut. You know, this is just a flimsy piece of metal that's passing through your stock, and yet I can get pretty bonkers repeatability on cut length with this thing. It makes quite a square cut, and I'm just starting to learn how to dial it in and finesse it. It's still a little bit of a learning. You know, I only picked this up 2 or 3 months ago, and so we're using it steadily now. I absolutely love this thing. What I used to do is I would buy the material pre-cut to length, and then we would load it into the machines. And so you pay a little bit of money. That's not a bad way to get started with CNC. But the more that you're doing, the more that it really can be a frustration to have to wait another couple days to get your materials so that they have time to put it through their saw department. And if there's a miscommunication, that gets complicated. And you're always paying just a little bit more. It's not always astronomically more, but when you control it yourself, it just gives you a lot more latitude for speed and for freedom. And then I just use this all the time for like prototyping and stuff. To be able to just chop something to the right length real quickly is a big deal. So I think of the tools that I make and sell, like the tube bender. You don't always need a tube bender to build a bicycle, but if you don't have a really nice tube bender around, you're kind of stuck with what other people can do for you. And if they're busy or if they don't do quite what you want, it's just frustrating. Or if what you want is kind of hard to communicate, or you have a higher quality level that you're trying to hold than other people, all of these reasons combined, you just need to have the tool in your shop. And so I just got to a point where I needed to have this tool in my shop. And I think that it really has a similar sort of value to me as like bringing a tube bender or something into your shop as a builder. It just gives you that control to do things on your timeline the way that you want to, and to be more picky about, like now I get to shop around more for material supply. This really has a lot of parallels to the tube bender. You know, if you're buying the Columbus tube that has the bend profile that you want, you're stuck with the Columbus tube, especially now during the sort of, you know, COVID pandemic, supply chain shortages. If you can choose now from Reynolds and Data and all these different companies, it just gives you a lot more latitude. So I really believe in, you know, when there's something that you do quite a bit, you should really have the tools and the ability to do it yourself. This right here, you would have seen this in some of my older videos where I'm doing the bike build stuff. This is a 1x30-inch belt sander, and recently I made this bracket here and I bolted it onto the wall. And this was a relatively simple bracket, but it was after I had started to really use that welding table, and it was a lot of fun for me to bang this out pretty quickly. I had this angle iron, and so I cut it. I cut it on the bandsaw square, and then I used my angle grinder to bevel cut it, and I welded it together. I spray painted it out in the parking lot, and I bolted it up to the wall. And it's really a revelation to have this set up like this. So previously, you know, when I first moved into the shop, I was just running around crazy, just trying to basically get the shop where I could produce stuff. And it's been a mess, and it's been slowly getting more organized. And this to me is like symbolic of like, all the steps that I'm taking always to try and make this more of a real shop. And so now when I cut something, if it's got a little bit of a burr, I can just take it right over here. I can deburr the edge of the material immediately without plugging anything in or walking across the shop. I have replacement belts right here. I can change the belts quickly. It's just a really big quality of life thing. It saves a ton of time. And you know, so the goal here is to like make a shop where everything is like that. It's just like you don't even need to try. Like everything you would want just kind of happens on its own. Oh, what's this? This is the Creator Frame Fixture. I think I put up a YouTube video maybe back in March about this product that I produce. And so you might have seen that video. It's pretty in-depth. We covered a lot of details. It's had some very small like cosmetic revisions since then. Like we moved this cool new pyramid of snakes laser etched logo onto the front here, and the data plate badge that used to be here got moved to this end cap. This one is not actually serialized or set up for a certain customer yet, so it's just waiting for that data plate. But I was using this to prototype and develop some add-ons that are coming in so that it's more of a full service fixture. That was always the plan. And so that stuff's coming real soon here. This is going to be holders to help you with chain stays. I have some stuff that helps hold seat stays and the tips of the stays. And I think I might even have a piece or two that comes in to help hold main tubes. So for instance, like the top tube of the frame is like self-mitering or self-fixturing by the miters. So if you have the miters fitting good, the tube will just kind of sit in there. And so depending on the angles, like if you just do like a little spring clamp on your head tube, sometimes you can just set the top tube in there and it sits still. But let's say you wanted to rotate the frame fixture, it would go falling on the floor. And so you can add additional tube holders that just kind of secure things and give you a little bit more holding and clamping and all that, so that you know, you can load up the tubes one by one and they're going to stay where they're going to stay. You can go about your business and start to, you know, tack them, and it's not all a house of cards that's about to fall apart on you. So there's a lot of development that's been going into this, and we're going to be covering more and more of this. The bench mount stand is finished. Those are getting powder coated right now, and we're going to have a rolling base for that stand coming here soon too. We're also going to go over the whole argon purge kit that is like an option for this, so there's more videos to come. So this here is a 48 by 60 by 10 inch piece of granite, and I don't take it for granted. This thing is sweet. I picked this up back in like January, and so this is a metrology tool. This is inspection grade granite that you can use to measure the flatness or the straightness or the height. You can use this as like a reference plane with other inspection tools. And so I got a good deal on this and I picked it up, and we do use it some, but I've been, I guess, kind of slow to get the base for it. So this isn't supposed to sit on the floor like this. And I toyed with the idea of building my own, you know, fabricating my own base to put under this, or buying one. And it's just, I'm never not busy, so I finally just ordered it. It's going to be here, I think, this week or next week. It also helped that material costs just keep going up and up and up, and the price of buying one was the same as it had always been, so I said, sure, I'll just buy it. Because I wasn't going to make it for much cheaper at all. I would be able to pay myself about $1 an hour to build it, so might as well just buy it, right? But that's going to be sweet. We have a dust cover for it, and I'll be having, I'm quite confident that this is more than flat enough across this whole range to inspect the things that I make to the level that they need to be inspected, but I will have a metrology company come out and certify it to whatever grade that it is and relap it if necessary. So this is a big flat surface, but the process of maintaining its flatness and bringing it back into flatness is actually pretty simple. It's pretty cool. They use things called autocollimators, and they have like a big cast iron lap and a lapping compound, and they can determine the shape of the surface if it's like slightly out of flatness, and then they can bring it back in so that it's a consistent reference. And then generally you would keep it with a cover on it, which I bought a cover for it, and then you would use height gauges and like calibrated precision instruments on this surface. It's not a workspace, it's a measurement tool, and so finally getting it up on a stand and getting a cover for it is going to be really nice to have. And it's just really, it's a really good reference surface, like to be able to check any work that you're doing. When you have a CNC machine shop and you don't have a surface like this, you can still usually get your numbers pretty close most of the time, but it's a lot harder to assess where you're really at. And I think it's important to be able to measure what you're doing so that you know that you're doing it right, but also so that you can be efficient as you produce it. So like, if you have some like half-ass way of measuring it and you're like reasonably confident after you've measured for 10 minutes that like, I think this is pretty good, can you imagine if you were efficient at measuring, how much more often you would measure things and how much your quality would go up, and how, you know, your measurements will be more meaningful when you actually have like, you know, if this can read to like, you know, a half-thousandth of an inch, you know, reliably over your range, if you're only looking for plus or minus 2/1000ths of an inch, then that's going to be really easy for you to hold your tolerance band. So, you know, what we do here, we're really trying to, you know, hit the tolerance that we need to. Sometimes that's a really tight tolerance, and sometimes it's not. It's dictated based on the application, but having the tools is a big deal. So this is my CNC lathe. This is what you would call a 2-axis CNC lathe. It's a slant bed. This here is the turret. It's a 12-position turret. And so let me fire it up for you. I picked this machine up a little over a year ago. It's a 1996 Clousing, so it's the same brand as my chop saw. It's my horizontal bandsaw. And this thing is just a beauty. I love the charm of it. It's old school. So just like a manual lathe, you have your 3-jaw chuck, and this can clamp on workpieces, and in fact, when you press this foot switch down here, the chuck will hydraulically open and close. And you can adjust, see these serrations here, you can adjust where these jaws sit on the 3-jaw chuck, so you can hold smaller and larger diameter parts, of course. So I was just making these parts. These are 20 millimeters in diameter, and they're made from a 7/8 of an inch round bar, which is 22.2 millimeters. And so each piece was off of a 36-inch long bar. I would face the end and turn it, part it off, and then I would use this bar puller, would pull it out again, and it would just loop and repeat the program. It's pretty incredible what can be done. I love this machine partly just because of its charm. This thing is so old school. The screen on this is it's just so delightful. I love I love this. You go into this, there's one of these, this one is real cool. I don't really use this for diagnostics myself, but it just looks so cool. This is like a ladder logic screen. It's all sorts of parameters you can adjust. I did lose the parameters for this, and I had to restore them, and it was a whole big to-do, and I learned a little bit about the machine. These old machines are kind of intimidating at first because they don't have the same kind of user-friendly, like, you know, design as something like this newer Haas machine does. But this machine really doesn't have a whole lot going on, and so once you learn how to use the control, it's kind of beautifully simple actually, and I love the charm of it. This has kind of a whine to it. You can hear the hydraulic pump is always kind of running when you're using it. And so that gets kind of grating, but I really can't say much bad about it. I picked this machine up for a ridiculous bargain. Somebody had it listed on Facebook Marketplace, and I paid $2,000 for this. So I had to go all the way to New Hampshire and load it up on a trailer. That was not easy. You know, when you go to buy machines, whether it's an old Bridgeport or whatever it is, a drill press, you know, moving machines can be a big deal. I made a video about moving a Bridgeport mill, but you know, by the time I went to move this, I had already moved a handful of other heavy pieces of equipment with not enough tools, and so I was kind of getting experienced, and it didn't go too poorly. I'll show you how the turret on this works. So this has, if I press this button, it'll index the turret. So there's 12 positions. This is a turning tool, a threading tool, a parting tool. This is a countersink. You know, this here is a drill. And this one actually, if we shut the door, you can see that's a through tool coolant drill, which is very cool. Those are not inexpensive. I think this is about $80 for a solid carbide drill bit. But you can drill an incredible number of holes when you have that set up correctly. You can drill them quickly, you get a nice surface finish, and I drill a lot of holes in stainless steel, so if you use a standard drill bit, you have to peck in and out of the hole. It's very slow, you don't get the best surface finish, and because the tool life isn't infinite, you know, the tools go for a while before they wear out eventually, then you need to always be checking on it to make sure that it's not going to blow up at a bad moment. But these are so reliable, being solid carbide and having that coolant at the tip of the tool. It's a very reliable drill actually. You could almost just walk away and let that go for 6 hours, and if it's working when you start, it's going to last quite a long time. They're really quite reliable, so I really love these for production. If only they were affordable enough that you could just get a whole drill index and fill it up and have every size right where you need it. So that's a standard size. This is 8.2 millimeters. I use this on a lot of tools, especially the frame fixture. There's a lot of 8.2 millimeter holes built into the frame fixture because I know that I have that drill in my lathe ready to go. So any round part with a hole on center line, it's probably 8.2 millimeters, unless it's bigger and I had to bore it out, and then it's 25 millimeters usually. So this machine here, this is my second CNC mill. In all those older YouTube videos, you could see I had a 1996 Bridgeport Torque Cut 22. That was a solid machine. I really don't have anything too bad to say about it, but it was old, and it was the machine by which I produced almost every single thing that I sold. It really, it was not the fastest, most efficient, or most capable. And so in November of 2019, this landed in my old tiny shop. I don't know if I ever did any YouTube videos where you could see this, but part of the reason I stopped doing all those build series videos is that I had to get rid of my Bridgeport and my manual lathe and my all sorts of stuff and that other machine just to make room for this, because this is mammoth. This thing is expansive. It's so much bigger than the old one. It's almost hard to convey. The old machine weighed 6,500 pounds. This weighs 14,000 pounds. This is just so much bigger. This is made by Haas. It's a VF4 SS, but of course I got cute and I taped over it so it says ass, because I'm a funny guy like that. And inside of the machine here, whereas my old machine had 22 inches of travel along the x-axis, the longer axis, this has 50 inches. So this is more than double of the x-axis travel. My other one had 16 inches on the y-axis, but this has 20. This has 5 more inches of Z travel, although that's pretty much irrelevant for the way that I machine stuff lower to the table generally. This has probing, which is really slick, more than I think a lot of people even realize, and more than I'm even currently utilizing it most of the time. It's a really powerful tool. And then this has a 4th axis. So this here, a lot of times you'll see this sort of, so this is the rotary 4th axis. And you can see how this motorized, controlled unit rotates your work pieces. This here is a vise that I use very regularly. This is the Roto Vise by Pearson Work Holding. They're in California. And basically, you can hold multiple work pieces, which is always cool. Holding more at once means that you can let the machine run for a longer period of time while you're off doing something else. But what's really big about this is that on this piece, let's say that I needed to machine the contour of the top and the outside, and I drilled some holes, and then I can actually rotate that piece, say 90 degrees, and now I can drill a hole in the side, and then I can flip it back over to the 270 degree mark, and I can drill some holes that way, and I can do all these different things, and you don't have to clock on exactly 90 degrees, although that's usually the most common. And you can create much more complicated parts faster and more easily, and it really allows you to make better work more easily. And so this is an example of something, this was a screw up part while it's getting set up, but you can see I have the cross hole and these top holes all in the same setup. And so I loaded it once and I hit start, and you know, I got it right after the first part. But basically, you know, it allows you to do more with less labor, which is very important because I'm trying to not only build my business and pay my employee and pay myself, but I want to provide good value to people, and I want to, you know, have fewer design limitations in my head always to say like, oh yeah, I could make this thing. It's more complicated, but I could still make it. And so that's kind of the idea, is equipping myself to be good at making things so that I can make them for people, rather than always wanting to make it just the easiest way, I guess. That's what I'm trying to do here. So this machine has been sweet. It has a 12,000 RPM spindle, which is about twice as fast as my old machine was. It's much more modern. When you go to do what's called 3D tool paths, where the tip of the tool is moving all around space in weird directions and moving quickly, this processes that a lot better. So when you're running a program, you'll see the code here, the G code, which tells the machine how to dance around the part. It can read through this much faster than my old machine could. And people like to talk about how the control of these Haas machines is very user-friendly. I would say that, yeah, it is. I think most machine controls, you know, if you're intelligent, you can learn it. It's not that big of a deal. But this one certainly is easy to use. It's got a color screen. It's pretty nice. And so this machine has been good to me. And I would say if you're looking at getting CNC machines, do not ever for a second discount the value of the fourth axis. This piece of metal right here makes the machine twice as valuable. The probe is cool, the high-speed machining is cool, the big travels are cool, it's all cool. This thing here is where the money is made. This is like the piece of the machine that I would recommend anybody get. If you got an old mill and you're thinking about upgrading it, see if you can just throw a fourth on it instead. This is a game changer. So this is sort of a narrow hallway between the bathroom and the machine, but I'll show you some stuff I got back here. This is a shelf that my dad made, and so I store a lot of fixtures and things on here. These are production tools that I use to help make tools for all of you or any of my customers. So these are for the braze clamp that I make. These are for part of the tube bender. These are for the miter daddy. I have a lot of these fixtures that I've built, and they take advantage of that fourth axis workflow where I can index the part to different positions during the program, and I can hold a bunch of stuff at once. It's amazing. I love it. I also have some, you know, Dynafile and some other random tools stacked up here. Back here we have a water deionizer. So this is sort of a home gamer unit that you would use to, like, you know, power wash your Corvette in your driveway. It keeps the mineral deposits from landing on your paint and like screwing with your paint, but it has a really useful function in the machine shop because the machining coolant, you really would like to keep the total dissolved solids of like minerals to the minimum in your machining coolant. And so you use this to provide a better quality of water, to make the coolant last longer so that it doesn't need to be disposed of as often, so you get better part finishes, you get longer tool life. Everything just goes better if you take care of your water. And so this is something I picked up to try and, you know, make the most of what we're doing here, and you know, invest a little bit up front to make a better process for what we're doing. Then back here, these are blanks that will become these sorts of fixtures. So, you know, it's 5" by 5" aluminum that I sawed at 7 or 8 inches long, and then I put on the mating features for these pull studs so that they can be mounted later. And I haven't designed these or allocated these yet, but they're ready to go. So when I want to use them, they're on the shelf, I pick them up, I throw them in the machine, I cut them out, and now they're a custom built fixture that does what I need to do so that I can be efficient in production while I make all the cool stuff that hopefully all of you want to buy from me. So this is the Workbench that you would have seen in my old videos and my bench vise. Just the other day I made new soft jaws for this. That was a long time coming. If you watch those videos that I used to do much, you remember my old jaws would just fall on the floor every 5 seconds, it felt like. They were super annoying, but these new ones are much better. I just bought a piece of copper from McMaster Carr. It was, I think, 2 inches by 60 thousandths of an inch thick by 24 inches long, something like that. And yeah, worked real good. These hold on much better, and then I used my little punch to punch in front and back, because I assume the one on the back fits better on the back because that's what I molded it around. I just folded them over and then I kind of hammered them to any features I could to just make them hold better, but it works so good. Having copper jaw covers is a big deal, and the way that these hard jaws are designed, I can't really take them out that easily. So if you look at the design of this, sometimes the jaws are bolted in from the front, but in this case, there's like taper pins that were driven in to hold these in place. And I probably could get those pins back out one way or another by like punching up from below, and then I could pull these out and I could make copper jaws that have this T-shaped profile with the cross holes, but this is much easier to make these covers. And in some cases you do want the grip of those hard sort of waffle grip jaws anyway. So these are great. I would encourage anybody to, just buy a sheet of copper and crack into it. I forgot to mention, my good friend Zach at Amigo Frameworks built me this and brought this to me about a year ago. He was working at a sign company and they could make this sort of stuff, so he just threw it together after hours. I'll be bringing this when I can to trade shows. It's totally badass. There's even LED backlights in there that make it look especially cool, and I just haven't gotten around to hooking that up yet. I want to get that like on a light switch, or so that it actually comes on when I flip on the shop lights and it just has like a dull green glow or something like that. Would be very, very cool. But even just having it up there just makes the shop feel a lot more pro and cool and all that sort of thing. Then in the rest of this space here, this is one of my favorite tube storage cabinets. So I've shown this before. I love how this allows you to just take the drawers with you, and you can store all sorts of stuff in there. And so as I start to do some bike frame builds here and there again, I'll use that to organize by project. The different tubes go in each one of these. So over here we have the load center. This shop has 100 amps of 208 volt 3-phase power. This is actually the same amount of supply that I had in my old shop. It's a much bigger shop. I don't think that I'm ever gonna need more than what this can supply in order to actually draw more than 100 amps at once. I think all of my machines would really need to be drawing a lot at once, and I've had them all running at the same time before, and it hasn't happened yet. But I would like to have a little more headroom. Certainly for like frame building applications, it's hard to imagine ever using more than 100 amps. But anyway, yeah, it's great to just have 3-phase and to be able to plug stuff in to the appropriate voltage here. This is the sort of like living room of the shop. I have a couch and I have this chair, and my desk is here, and I have the dual screen computer monitor. I actually have a desk. I used to not have a desk for a long time, which is funny now to imagine that because I have so much of my day is spent there. But and this rug really ties the room together. I had this rug in my trade show booth at the Philly Bike Expo when I split a trade show booth with Peter Olivetti a couple years ago, 2018 or 2017 or something. It was the debut of the tube bender, the Cobra tube bender, and Pete and I shared a booth and we had this rug, and it was a lot of fun. And now this rug is in my shop for the time being anyway. I'll probably downsize some of this living room stuff at some point, but I had some extra furniture and I figured I'd just kind of dress it up. It's rare that we have visitors just hanging out, but when we do, it's really nice to have some comfortable seating for them. I kind of figured maybe my employee and I would have like meetings or something, but that doesn't ever really happen. We just stand up and talk. So anyway, I got a fridge. That's a big deal. I picked that up for 30 bucks. Found that on Facebook Marketplace. It has a condensation issue, so there's always water inside of it, but I mean, it's 30 bucks. What are you gonna do for 30 bucks? We could have popsicles in there. I'm a fiend for bagels. And having been to New York City and gotten bagels a couple times, you just can't go back. This is the best place that I could find in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's called Terra Bagel. I get, a dozen of everything bagels, and then I put them in the freezer, And they're pretty good. They're better on the first day, of course, but we got a bagel slicer. Well, let me just show you the kitchenette. So if you need to get ripped, you can always do some chin-ups on the way into the bathroom. And our bathroom doubles as the kitchenette. So it's like a full ADA bathroom, which is so swanky. We have a shower. We have like all the handholds and stuff to make it ADA compliant. You can just roll in here with a wheelchair if you had to. And then of course we have, it's kind of weird, but the kitchenette right here next to the toilet, it hasn't really been an issue so far, but you can microwave stuff. This is where I toast my bagels. We have our bagel guillotine, so you can slice off the rich guy's head in your mind as you're slicing your bagel, right? Here's our crappy coffee maker, and you know, we have like the ability to wash some dishes and stuff. It's so nice. My old shop, I mean, I'm really grateful to have had that shop, but the bathroom situation there was like cold water only, really nasty water that you wouldn't want to drink. I had to walk through a paint booth to get to it, and so now being in a shop that has like a, you know, like a real bona fide bathroom with enough space in it that we can keep like a kitchenette setup that doesn't get the coolant and the dust and mist and stuff from the shop in here is a pretty big deal. And only having like, you know, one employee and myself here, we have the capacity, I guess, to like not be in each other's way too much. About a year ago, I interviewed Paul Brody on my podcast, the Shut Up and Build Bikes podcast. He has this cool book. He mailed me a copy. It's so cool. It's his whole story. I like keeping this right here on the coffee table. If you haven't seen Paul Brody's YouTube channel, I don't know what rock you're living under. His YouTube channel just smokes mine. He's such a talented builder and frame builder and everything else. So check out his channel and subscribe to that. We're going to be doing more videos here in the shop soon, so definitely subscribe and hit the bell. See you soon. Clemmy.